You are now listening to the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Welcome to the Radiance Films podcast, a show dedicated to all things Radiance Films. I'm your host, Adam Lundy, and I'm back again today to talk about all the latest releases and announcements from Radiance. So we're going to start off with the announcements. For context, I'm recording this on Monday the 16th of February, so the announcements were just under a week ago. I was supposed to get this episode out last week, but then things got crazy, so I had to push it out until today. So I'm going to just go through what was announced last week, just kind of talk about the individual films. If I have any particular thoughts on them, I'll shout them out there, and also just give some information on the special features and stuff like that. So I'm just going to pull up the website here. So there's 4 main kind of Radiance releases. There is a sub-label, well, not a sub-label, kind of a partner label release as well. I'm not going to go too much into that, and I'll kind of explain why as we get through the rest. So I'm going to start things off with the Sadao Nakajima film Aesthetics of a Bullet. So this is obviously not the first Nakajima film that we've had, and also, you know, we have some coming out in February as well. So just kind of go through kind of what Radiance tell us about this film. So a Yakuza gang selects a good-for-nothing street vendor to stir up trouble in enemy territory. With a flashy suit, a gun, and a pocket full of money, he feels like a king, but when trouble comes knocking, he realizes that waving a gun and pulling the trigger are two very different things. After the major studios refused to finance it, director Sadao Nakajima took this project to New Wave Bastion Art Theatre Guild with a deeply impressive performance by Suhineko Watase that predates Robert De Niro's indelible turn as Travis Bickle in Scorsese's Taxi Driver by 3 years. Aesthetics of a Bullet is a lost gem of 1970s Japanese cinema ripe for rediscovery. So the main reason I'm excited about this release is because we've already had a Nakajima release already out in the Rapacious Jailbreaker, as I mentioned in the last episode, kind of the return episode of the podcast that I did. That was a film that really kind of really surprised me. I really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to seeing more from him. Of course, you know, in an episode's time, I'm going to be reviewing the Godfather trilogy, the Japanese Godfather trilogy, I should say. Again, also by Nakajima. So I'll know a little bit more about him and his style and his aesthetics, you know, by the time the next episode comes out, which, you know, may, you know, inform or change this opinion that I have kind of, you know, for Aesthetics of a Bullet. But in terms of this release, it sounds really promising. The plot sounds something that's pretty up my street. I like a kind of a neo-noir, you know, type of film about you know, outsiders and stuff like that. So that sounds really fun. The artwork on this is really, really beautiful. Some of the special features, just to kind of go over them. Of course, you have your typical kind of HD digital transfer and the uncompressed mono audio. There is a newly filmed appreciation by filmmaker Robert Svetke. There's a new interview with filmmaker Kuriyoshi Kumakiri. And there's an archival interview with Sadao Nakajima. There is also a booklet featuring new writing by Olaf Muller and an archival essay on the film. So your pretty kind of standard Radiance special features included with this one, in terms of both kind of new appreciations and archival stuff. Seems pretty par for the course for these guys. So this is a release. This is, you know, definitely kind of one that I'm looking forward to seeing, and when it kind of arrives will be one of the first that I put in the player. The next one on the list is a little bit interesting. So this is Jeanne le Pucelle, which is an adaptation of the kind of story of Joan of Arc by Jacques Rivette. It's split into 2 parts, which is Le Batel and Le Prison. My French is terrible, so I do apologize for that. But it's a 2-parter. This is currently streaming on the Criterion channel, so I had a quick kind of glance at it. I didn't watch it or anything, but I had a quick glance. Both parts were quite long. I think altogether the film ends up being several hours, which, you know, with it being a Jacques Rivette film and, you know, being a long film, we shouldn't be too surprised by that. I suppose the fact that it is split in 2 parts makes it a little bit more digestible for people who maybe struggle with a longer runtime. So it's already split for us, without having to figure out our own intermissions. Again, just to kind of read you what Radiance have provided about this film on their website. 15th century France, tasked by visions of saints to help free her country from the English, a young peasant girl leaves her humble home to meet the heir to the French throne, determined to lead his troops into battle. She ends the siege on the city of Orléans and accompanies the triumphant king on to his coronation in Reims. Injured during subsequent battles, she is soon captured by the enemy, who put her faith on trial. The mythical figure of Joan of Arc comes to vivid life in this grounded and moving adaptation by Jacques Rivette, an epic 2-part portrait starring a magnetic Sandrine Bonnier. Again, I wasn't familiar of this adaptation even kind of existing prior to this, despite it being on the Criterion Channel. I've seen a couple of Joan of Arc adaptations. Of course, you have the one by Carl Dreyer, and then the other one I've seen is the Robert Bresson version. I like both of those movies for different reasons. For some reason, some people don't like the Bresson one. I actually quite enjoyed it. This one will be interesting. It's a kind of a more of a modern look at it. This was made in the 90s, so it's full color compared to the kind of black and white. And with Dreyer and with Bresson, they're kind of known for their sparse sets. So I'd be interested if this one version is more cinematic compared to their visions. So I wouldn't say I'm super kind of thrilled. I'm going to be throwing it in the player first thing, and that's partially down to the length of it. Even though I did quite enjoy, Va Savoir that came out last year from Radiance. I'm very much intrigued by Rivette's interpretation of this kind of very well known story. Again, just including the special features. So this is a 4K restoration from the original negatives. It does include what appears to be a newly filmed interviews with co-writer Pascal Bonitzer, and also with critic and author Beatrice Leoza. There's an archival interview with Jacques Rivette and Sandrine Bonnier. Newly improved translation, and then a limited edition booklet featuring new writing by critic Willow Caitlin McClay and newly translated archival writing. So again, very similar to the previous release, both kind of new and archival stuff being included in here. It being a 4K restoration is exciting, despite it not being an actual 4K disc, but it should be pretty clean based on that. The next release, one that is coming out in full kind of UHD 4K, is a very intriguing one, because it's a Brian De Palma film, but not perhaps the type of Brian De Palma film that most people would know him for. So this is a film called Hi Mom. And again, to give you the kind of rundown on this, an aspiring adult filmmaker, John Rubin, who's played by Robert De Niro, returns from a tour of Vietnam and, armed with his film camera, attempts to find meaning and inspiration in the counterculture of New York in 1970. Rubin graduates from serendipitously filming his neighbors to joining a militant black experimental theater group before flirting with full-scale domestic terrorism. In this hilariously madcap satire that has still retained its outrageous power to shock 50 years after initially stunning American audiences. It is a world premiere in 4K UHD. It's an intriguing one. I'm a big Brian De Palma fan, but like most people, I've only really seen his thrillers. Blowout, for example, that's one of my favorite films of all time. So I'm a big Brian De Palma fan, but I'd never seen this one. I'd heard of it. I know about his kind of early collaborations with De Niro. There was an Arrow box set, if I remember correctly, a good few years ago now. I think it's long out of print. And I can't recall if it included this film or not, but I know that they had obviously worked together. So I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be interesting. The artwork is very out there, this kind of brash yellow, with Robert De Niro holding some girl whose dress is after floating up. Maybe his mom, maybe, I don't know. I don't know enough about the film to make a judgment on exactly what's happening on the poster or the artwork. But this one sounds fun, if nothing else. I'm really interested to see how De Palma pulls off black comedy. Because again, like thinking back through the films that I've seen from him, there's nothing I can really point out to say, that was, humorous or blackly comic. So I'd be interested to see how he works with this tone. It's going to be something completely different for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people as well, who again are kind of more familiar with De Palma's later, thrillers in the kind of late 70s into the 80s. So again, just to confirm the inclusions on this, and I'll speak briefly on the 4K aspect on this. So it is a 4K restoration from the original negative. It is presented in a 4K UHD disc and a Blu-ray, so it does include both, it seems. Audio commentary done by Travis Woods, who's been on previous releases. There's a new interview with critic Ellen E. Jones. There is an experimental theatre production called Dionysus in '69, which is 85 minutes long, and from what I remember, it's been pretty much impossible to see in decent quality for pretty much all that time. I saw some comments online when this was announced that a lot of people were excited for this inclusion, so this seems interesting. It seems like it's a filmed version of an experimental theatre production. So, I'll check it out and see what that's about. How it relates to Hi Mom, I'm not too sure. It seems a bit random, but we'll see, what it brings. It does also include an archival interview with co-writer Charles Hirsch that was filmed back in 2018. So it's possible that was part of the original Arrow set, but again, I could be wrong on that front. And also we have a limited edition booklet featuring new writing by Matt Zoller Seitz. So one thing I found interesting in this, that it seems to be a common trend with the newly announced 4Ks, is that you're no longer getting the option to choose between a 4K release and just a Blu-ray release. That was an option in last year's releases, that you could choose the ones that were just Blu-ray were a little bit cheaper, because obviously it didn't include the 4K disc, whereas it seems all of the ones that have been announced this year so far, you don't have that option anymore. It's just a dual pack where you get both, which I think is a little bit disappointing. Having that option for some people who maybe haven't upgraded their systems yet, to just buy a Blu-ray for that kind of, and save a few pound. I think that was a good option. Like I myself, I watch everything through my Xbox Series X, so it's full 4K, so I'll be getting the 4K releases anyway. But I know that there is a lot of people out there who are still on Blu-ray for various reasons. Either they have a region-free Blu-ray player that they use primarily for everything that they watch, or they may not have upscaled their TV yet to like a full 4K, although that's become more reasonable price-wise, over the last few years. But taking away that option, a little bit disappointing. I assume it's to do with saving money on production costs, but just wanted to kind of just give my opinion on that really quick, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are paying extra for these 4K releases and will probably not get much use out of the 4K disc. The final film then that was announced as part of the kind of mainline slate, we have a film called Le Professionnel, which is by a guy called Georges Lautner, and stars Jean-Paul Belmondo in what looks to be just a kick-ass action film, just purely based on the artwork. Never seen it. I'm a big Belmondo fan, especially his work with Godard, kind of in the early 60s. Not his first time in the kind of Radiance collection, if we want to put it that way. If it was in Mississippi Mermaid, one of the kind of earlier Truffaut releases. This one, again, just to kind of give the rundown on it. So when his orders to kill an African president change at the last minute, French secret agent Jocelyn Beaumont isn't recalled but betrayed by his superiors, who denounce him to the enemy as an assassin. After 2 arduous years in a foreign jail, Jos escapes back to his homeland with vengeance on his mind, determined to carry out his original mission. He lets his former bosses know of his plans, using his spying skills to taunt them and to evade the brutal Commissioner Rosen, who's played by Robert Hussein, who of course has been featured quite prominently last year in Radiance. This French classic marked a high point in Belmondo's action career, his spectacular stunts and brawny charm underlined by Ennio Morricone's iconic team Chi Mai. So this is probably the one I'm most excited for. It ticks a lot of boxes for me. It seems like it's just a good, gritty, fun action movie. But Belmondo is definitely the selling point for me. As I said, I'm a huge Jean-Paul Belmondo fan. I'll pretty much watch anything he's in. So I'm really, really excited for this one. And it's also pretty packed with special features. So there's a new interview with critic and author Jeanne Vicendel about Jean-Paul Belmondo's stardom. There's a new interview with film score expert Lovely John about the Ennio Morricone iconic theme. There's an archival television interview with Jean-Paul Belmondo that was filmed in 1981, and there's also an archival interview with René Chateau, who was Belmont's agent and producer, which is from 1982. This one has an audio commentary, which is with film historians Howard S. Berger, Steve Mitchell, and Nathaniel Thompson. And then there's also a booklet featuring an archival interview with the director George Lautner. So it's a pretty solid month overall, in my opinion. Out of the four, the two I'm most excited for would be Aesthetics of a Bullet and Le Professionnel. Hi Mom, I'm kind of on the fence for because I just don't know what to expect tone-wise. And Jeanne Le Pucelle, I'm a little bit, it's not going to be the first one I put in. Now, this could go on to surprise me. Va Savoir, again, was one of the big surprises for me last year in terms of how much I enjoyed it. So Jeanne Le Pucelle could end up being the same thing. So we'll see. But for me, Le Professionnel and Aesthetics of a Bullet, they're going to be the first two I put in. Those are the ones I'm personally most excited about. The other announcement, or the other release that was part of this announcement slate, is for a new partner label called Chasm, which I'll pull up the details on it. I will just give you a heads up, this is not a label I'm going to be getting involved with in terms of reviewing. It's just I'm going to be sticking to mainline Radiance on this podcast. We'll perhaps be dipping into Transmission depending on the release, and the only reason we'll be doing that is because Transmission is ran by the Radiance team, as opposed to these kind of partner labels like Chasm, and then like the ones previously like Raro Video, Grindhouse, Mawu Films, stuff like that, where it's a partner for distribution purposes, but they're not part of the Radiance team. That's why I'm not going to be reviewing this one, but I'll just quickly kind of give a rundown on it just in case people are interested in knowing kind of what it's about. And to be fair, the artwork and stuff looks really, really cool. It looks like a really nice release if you're into this stuff. Just to give you kind of a brief little thing about what Chasm Films is, this is what's on the Radiance website. Chasm Films is a label dedicated to curating a catalogue of underseen, underappreciated, and underground world genre cinema. So, it's not completely outside the wheelhouse of what Radiance does. This seems like it is going to delve more into the genre stuff, and this kind of first release would point towards perhaps where they'll end up going. So this release is from Hungary, and it's a film called Taxidermia. And the synopsis reads, so in Hungary during World War II, I'm going to struggle with these Hungarian names, Vendel Moraz-Govjany indulges his outlandish sexual fantasies while stationed at an isolated military outpost. Decades later, his illegitimate child Kalman Balatoni has become a professional speed eater who dreams of consuming his way to fame and fortune. Instead, he grows old and immobile, cared for by his son Lyoska Balatoni, a taxidermist determined to leave behind a great work of art when he dies. Written and directed by perhaps Hungary's greatest working filmmaker, György Palfi, Taxidermia blends body horror, black comedy, and astonishing aesthetic beauty to paint a fascinating portrait of Hungary from the 1940s to the 21st century. So look, it sounds interesting on paper, but as I said, I'm just not going to invest much time and effort into reviewing these as part of this podcast. If something comes out that does tickle my fancy and I end up picking it up and I end up liking it, I'll bring it up at a later stage. But I just wanted to get this out there now in case people were wondering about, in the next future episodes, why am I not talking about this release? It's just because it's not part of the Radiance mainline. So that's it for the most recent announcements. Before we go any further, I'm just going to have a quick break and play a quick couple of ads. Don't worry, these are not for products. Instead, these are for podcasts that are part of the same network that I'm in that you may be interested in taking a listen to. So I'll be back in, 30 seconds, a minute, something along those lines.
Hey everybody, this is Ryan from the New World Pictures podcast, where we're on a mission to watch every movie ever made by New World Pictures. With me as always is Mark.
Every movie?
Every movie?
Every movie? From the Roger Corman cult classics like Battle Beyond the Stars,
Help!
and the super weird stuff you never even heard of like Eat and Run.
Makes your tongue want to say, hey, it's nice in here.
Yes, Mark, every movie. And Erica.
Every movie?
Yes, Erica, every movie.
Every movie, so we're still talking about Night Zoo.
I've seen it.
And all the bonus stuff too. We're talking things we loved, things we hated, favorite scenes, inside jokes. And I know we're not at final questions, but are we still talking about Ryan's research?
I know I am. So check out our website, newworldpicturespodcast.com, or subscribe to the New World Pictures Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow us on the socials, and we'll see you next time at the New World Pictures Podcast, proud to be a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello, filthy movie lovers. My name is Gentry Austin.
And I'm Casey Scott.
And we're the hosts of the Sin Syndicate, film podcast for something weirdos, anti-criterion bros, and Joseph Sarno aficionados. Join us semi-weekly as we peer into the adults-only theaters and sticky-floored cinemas of the golden age of sexploitation, when the morals were loose, the laws were murky, and the intercourse was all simulated. Find us now on the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Now I'm back. So what we're going to do next is let's talk about what's actually been coming out. So it's, as I said, kind of middle of February, so I've had a little bit of time to ruminate on the stuff that came out in January. It was a kind of a late January release, and it was only 3 films, so I'm going to kind of talk through each of those, kind of give you my thoughts on each. Overall, it was a really, really solid month. All 3 I liked, to varying degrees. They were all stuff that I would recommend to certain people depending on your tastes. To kind of start off, we're going to go on order of what's on the Radiance website here. So we're going to start off with the Francesco Rosi film, Illustrious Corpses. So just to give you the kind of rundown again that's on the Radiance website. When a series of Supreme Court judges are murdered, Inspector Rojas is sent to discover the truth. A procedural noir soon turns into a labyrinthine conspiracy thriller as corruption and institutional power converge. An investigative mystery by a titan of the form, Francesco Rossi's urgent adaptation of Leonardo Sciascia's novel is set to a haunting score of Piero Piccioni. And featuring legendary stars Charles Vanal, Max von Sydow, and Fernando Rey. So I thought this film was phenomenal. This is my favorite film from the January slate. It's really, really something special. I didn't really know too much about it when I went into it. I was basically just going by what was included in the description. I wasn't really too familiar with what the form and how it was going to play out and stuff like that. So this is a very kind of paranoid, like I would almost call it a neo-noir that kind of happens to be set in Italy. It's includes the kind of backdrop of these rising tensions between the kind of Christian right-wing government and the growing kind of left-wing kind of communist left, and this is kind of all just kind of boiling over in the background as this detective Rojas is just trying to solve some murders of judges, and as he kind of digs deeper and deeper, things seem to lead him to higher and higher places, and kind of vast conspiracy starts to open up. It seems like a kind of like it will start as a simple kind of murder mystery, but more and more layers start to get peeled back. It's really thrilling. It has a really good kind of central mystery, but it also has this really great political message that's still really timely today, in terms of like media and political subterfuge. The way that it's like that saying, every accusation is a confession. It kind of plays into that a little bit, where what's being kind of sold to the masses is not necessarily what's happening beneath the surface. And Inspector Rojas, like he's just a policeman, he's a normal guy. He's kind of our vehicle into this world to kind of show us what's going on behind closed doors and very high ranking official buildings. There's one film that I can kind of really kind of relate to it is the Alan Pakula film, The Parallax View, which came out 2 years before this. So honestly, like, I would be shocked if The Parallax View wasn't an influence on this film, because the kind of direction, the kind of slow, kind of methodical way the film is made with the camera work, it's really, really similar, or at least it really reminded me of The Parallax View, especially with the way the camera is kind of set up in this. Either it's really far back, which to me kind of gives this kind of theme of surveillance, or things are like really up close, so that like you are almost trying to find hints of the truth, or try find hints that somebody maybe knows more than what they're letting on. It kind of jumps between that. You're either kind of surveying, or you're kind of up close and personal with these characters, and it's a really, really amazingly well made film. I think the narrative is incredibly strong as well. It backs it up both kind of aesthetically and narratively. If I was to kind of pair it up maybe with a film from the Radiance back catalogue, it would be the film Slap the Monster on Page One, which again I find is an incredibly timely film that's kind of set in a similar time frame, this kind of battle between the right and the left, and the right are kind of twist the narrative to point the finger towards the left, which, it's crazy, you know, talking about this stuff that was going on in, you know, the 70s in Italy, and the exact same stuff is happening now across the world. It's both exhausting and interesting and infuriating that we're kind of going these cycles. So it certainly is a political film. If you know you're one of these people who likes to put their head in the sand and pretend the film and art isn't political, then you may not enjoy this one too much. But I thought it was fantastic. It was definitely my favorite release from this slate, and definitely one of my favorite films just generally that I've watched in the last few months. In terms of the special features that are included on this release, well, first of all, it's a 4K restoration that was done by the Cinetica di Bologna and the Film Foundation. So it's a really, really great looking print that Radiance have put out. Again, it's not on a 4K disc, but it's a 4K restoration, so it looks as good as it could possibly can, you know, from a Blu-ray's perspective. It does include an archival audio commentary by Alex Cox that was filmed back in 2021. There's an archival interview with Francesco Rossi that was filmed in 76, and another one that was filmed with Rossi and Lino Ventura. And there's also a new interview with Gaetana Marone, who's the author of The Cinema of Francesco Rossi, alongside a booklet with new writing on the film by Michael Atkinson and newly translated writing by and an interview with Francesco Rossi. So it's a relatively packed release, not the most packed one you'll ever see from a Radiance perspective, but it's a pretty packed one. Honestly, with this one, the film itself is worth the price alone, in my opinion. It's a fantastic watch. It's one I'm going to revisit because I'm sure that there's little bits and bobs that I missed during this film, because there's so many layers that you can peel back. So I would be shocked if I didn't miss stuff that I might pick up on it next time around. So Illustrious Corpses, definitely my favorite release of the January slate. My next kind of favorite, and it just happens to be the next one kind of on the list, we're once again revisiting the cinema of Taikedo, of course one of Radiance's most favorite directors, and it's been such a joy over the last few years to discover Taikedo, you know, a filmmaker that I had never heard of, and you know, I'm sure most people who are not super deep in Japanese cinema lore would have known much about Taikedo. But every film that Radiance have put out has really been a joy to watch, because he has such a unique voice and a unique way of filming, and a great, you know, just mise en scène. Just the way he makes movies he is a true auteur, and I'm glad that Radiance are putting spotlight on him, because I would love for more people to discover him now that I've discovered them as well. And again, I'm certain that I'm not the only one in the same boat here. It's great that Taiketo is finally getting his flowers, and I hope that that continues with even more releases, because from what I recall, from someone told me recently, he directed nearly 50 films. I'm sure a lot of that's probably kind of mandated studio work, but I'm sure there's also a lot of great stuff that'll be coming our way as well over the next few years, fingers crossed. Just to kind of give you the rundown on this film, Blood of Revenge. So what reads on the website is Osaka 1907. The upstart Hoshino gang tries to assassinate the boss of the Kiyatatsu syndicate, who are in charge of the construction business. The attempt fails, but sets in motion a spiral of violence as the Hoshino sabotage building sites and kill a. Am I reading this right? The attempt fails, but sets in motion a spiral of violence as the Hoshino sabotage building sites and kill a junior Kiyotatsu member. I'm not sure if that reads correctly. When the old boss dies of his wounds, Senior Lieutenant Kikuchi decides to take on the Hoshino gang alone. Director Taiketo's first Yakuza film is a feast for the eyes, with bold set design, vivid colors, and daring shot compositions, bringing to life a timeless tale of honor and vengeance. I completely agree with that. It's a really, really great looking film. There's one shot in particular that's kind of very low down camera with a kind of a stream or a river going along one side and a sunset. And this is all on a soundstage, by the way. So it just has that kind of artificial but very beautiful look. As two of the main characters kind of talk about their problems with one another. So it is a Yakuza kind of crime film, but this one's not in the style of Fukusaku. For me, it's a little bit more indebted to like a Chanbara or a Jidaigeki. It's kind of more of a classic feel to it, rather than the kind of quick cuts and kind of breakneck speed of a Fukusaku Yakuza film. The main character, Asajiro, is played by Koji Tsurata. He's not like this kind of gun-toting crazy Yakuza main character that, again, you would be used to if you've only really seen Fukusaku Yakuza films. He's very much a kind of chivalrous Yakuza. He's fiercely loyal to his boss. He's very respectful with everything that he does, even when he has to go against shady characters. He's always very kind of courteous and righteous. Has great kind of he's just a very chivalrous, righteous character, which in this kind of modern setting, because it's not a classic film, this is set in the early 20th century, so in this kind of modern setting where the Yakuza were becoming this kind of more modern outfit, this gets taken advantage of by a rival boss, and this is where the kind of main kind of plot of the film kind of kicks in, really, because we have this old Yakuza way versus the new Yakuza way. As I said, look, from a cinematic point of view, this is a very wide array of shots and compositions. Stuff is always moving. The blocking is always very interesting. The camera is always kind of following the action. It's very well choreographed, and like I said, it's just incredibly well shot. He can do these kind of, like I said, these low angle kind of classic Otsu style shots, but then he can also do really unique framing and unique movement, like a Seijun Suzuki, but then like his he can shoot action just as well as anyone like Kurosawa or anyone else. So he can kind of do it all. For me, Taiketo is a bit of a jack of all trades filmmaker in that respect. He really can do everything, and this film is a great portfolio of the type of shots that he can do and the type of scenes that he can create with his camera. If I had to give this film any kind of a bit of a criticism, and the reason why it's not my favorite is that the pacing is a little bit odd. It leaves itself with a lot to do in the final kind of 15-20 minutes, which is kind of where the main action takes place. Most of it up to that point is almost more of a melodrama than a crime film. Obviously there's crime happening, but the way that it's happening is kind of more indebted with a melodrama kind of style plot, rather than if you're expecting kind of 90 minutes of bloody action, you'll probably be disappointed. Now hopefully you won't go in with those expectations, but if you did, there could be some issues there. For me personally, I think I would have preferred an extra 15 or 20 minutes on the runtime, just to kind of make the final act feel a bit more bombastic. Because, like I said, it does a lot in the last 15 minutes. It's kind of similar to Suzuki's Tattooed Life in that there's like a large, most of the runtime is quite melodramatic, and then it just has this 15 minutes of just kick-ass action at the end. Whereas I would have maybe rather a little bit more of that action. Another thing you could do as well, just from a pacing point of view, there's this kind of weird romance subplot between Asajiro and a geisha that only really serves to show how noble Asajiro is, because he treats this geisha really well. He pays for her for a few days just so that she can go and visit her sick, dying father, as opposed to, getting with her. He tries to save her from like an abusive client, all this kind of stuff. So this whole subplot, which takes up a good chunk of the film, it only really serves to show that he's this noble good guy, but everything else he does in the film also shows it, so it's a little bit asinine. That's my only grievance I have with it, that the pacing could be snappier to make it more of an action film. But that's just me. If you like more of the melodrama character work, then I think you'll like this film a lot. But like I said, I like it a lot as well. I think it's technically fantastic. Obviously, just the script could have done a little bit of tweaking for me. So that was my second favorite, and then my kind of third favorite, with the third release of January, which I still liked, just because it's the bottom of my rankings. I still enjoyed this film, and I'll get into why shortly. But it's the Francois Truffaut release of The Wild Child, which again, I'll give you the rundown from the Radiance website. So in 1798, so this is a supposed true story. In 1798, a young boy who cannot speak, read, or write is found living alone in a forest in France. Determined to integrate the child into society, Dr. Itard, who's played by Francois Truffaut, takes him under his wing, gives him a name, and attempts to teach him how to communicate. Based on a true story, Francois Truffaut's moving tale of care, education, and connection boasts stunning black and white cinematography by Nestor Almendros, and a touching central performance by the director himself in his first credited role in a feature film. So I'll go through the kind of special features, which I realized I didn't do for Blood of Revenge. So just to quickly jump back to Blood of Revenge, the special features on this one are a short film by Taikedo, which is called Lights Are Scary, a visual essay by Mark Schilling, and a limited edition booklet featuring new writing by Earl Jackson, and a archival review. And then the special features included on The Wild Child are as an archival on-set interview with Francois Truffaut, an archival television interview with Francois Truffaut and author Lucien Malson, new interview with critic and author Jeanette Fichendot, and a booklet featuring archival writing by Truffaut and Almendros, and new writing by Adam Scoville. So look, in terms of The Wild Child, I liked it. It was very different to what I anticipated visually. I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't expect it to be in black and white, just because this film came out in 1970, so I expected it to be in color. I went into this pretty blind, apart from what's written on the back. So I expected it to be in color. So when it was shot in black and white, that was a bit of a surprise. Not, for better or for worse, it was just a surprise. But what did surprise me in a very positive way was how it's shot. The only way I can describe this is, and I don't know why, from a stylistic point of view, why Truffaut chose to do this, because it doesn't really play much part thematically. But it's shot like a silent film. There's like those kind of pinhole style shots where the screen will kind of close in and highlight something like you'd see in kind of silent films and serials and stuff like that. But the cinematography is stunning. Almendros, obviously, he's one of the greatest cinematographers of all time, so that should not be a surprise. But it's a very good-looking film, and it just caught me off guard, the kind of style of this. It almost reminded me a little bit of like Vampire, that Dreyer film, or kind of, again, not necessarily silent, but kind of early kind of gap between silent and talkie films, kind of like late 20s, early 30s stuff. So visually, very, very interesting film. Narratively speaking, I think you're going to be in two camps with this one. I got something out of the narrative that some people may not get out of it, because the film, and this is not really a spoiler because there's no real acts or kind of beginning, middle, and end with the wild child. Essentially the entire film is Truffaut's character teaching this wild child various things, and he learns various things, and that's it. There's no real conflict, there's no kind of beginning, middle, and end. There's no, conflict needs to be resolved or anything like that. It is just teaching, and then we see what has been learned, and that's essentially the majority of the film. That's like 99% of the film, and that may not work for some people. They may not get anything from that, even if there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it. They just may not get something from that. I can put myself in the shoes of that person. Like, there's people that I kind of talk to movies with that I know that they wouldn't really get anything from this film, and that's fine. I personally got something from it because these kind of touching teaching moments just reminded me a lot of, when I'm teaching my toddler something, and when she gets it, that kind of heartwarming breakthrough moment where your toddler learns something. So I was able to kind of connect with the film emotionally from that perspective, because I was able to put myself in the shoes of Truffaut's character as that kind of teacher. But if I had watched this film 5 years ago, before I had kids, before I was really married, before I had any real responsibilities in my life, I may not have gotten anything from it. So it's one of those films that I think will catch people at the right time. And it may never catch some people at all. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's just one of these films that it will either resonate with you or it won't. And it's just the type of film that it is, with it not really having anything else to grasp onto apart from, hey, this is a really pretty shot, or hey, this is a really beautiful moment between a father figure and a child. And there's nothing else to really take from it. At least from my perspective, there wasn't really many layers that I was able to peel back on this one. So I liked it, but I will go in with the caveat that you may not get anything from it, and that's okay. It's just the type of film that it is. So that's that. So those are the January releases. As I said, if you're only going to pick up one of these three, if you're someone who doesn't buy everything, I will 100% would recommend Illustrious Corpses, an absolutely fantastic film that I will be revisiting, with Blood of Revenge coming in kind of, if I'm going to rank them, second, and then The Wild Child coming in third. But overall, a very, very solid month. We've kind of seen with January's over the last couple of years, they're a little bit smaller scale, not many releases. I guess, January is a tough month for a lot of people financially, so that makes sense from a business perspective to not throw a shit ton at us. I'm really, really looking forward to next month's recording, because we're going to be covering, well, I say next month, obviously this is the stuff that's coming out in a couple of weeks, and we'll probably start shipping soon, because there's going to be a lot to get through. We have Libido, we have Iphigenia, we have the Japanese Godfather trilogy, and we also have the second transmission release, which is The Stuntman, and I'm going to be covering all of those in the next episode. That will come out sometime within a week of the next announcements. So again, I would expect the next episode sometime in mid-March. As I alluded to in the last episode, I am still planning on doing some Vault episodes. The first Vault episode is planned. The guest is locked and loaded. I don't have a time frame on when it's going to be, because it's just about scheduling. But I will tell you that we are going to be covering the Radical Japan Nagisa Oshima set in full. So we're going to discuss every film that's included. We're going to do a deep dive into special features. So if you haven't picked up that set, or you haven't dove into it yet, maybe keep an eye out for that episode over the next couple of weeks or couple of months. And I'm going to be doing that for you. So that's all we got time for. I hope you enjoyed this episode. As I said before, last time out, if you're on Blue Sky, give me a follow there. My link is in the description. We can talk about movies. You can follow me on Letterboxd as well, where you can see my ratings and reviews for all of these before I even record an episode. So that's that. Take care.
Thank you for listening. To hear more shows from the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, please select the link in the description.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello, my name is Kevin Tudor, and I'm one of the 3 hosts of Almost Major, a film podcast dissecting many major indie studios and the films they release. Every week, myself, Charlie Nash, and Bryden Doyle discuss overlooked, forgotten, or bona fide classic indie films via studio-specific miniseries. We've previously covered numerous films from Artisan Entertainment, Lionsgate Films, and New Line Cinema. Titles including The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, Dogville, But I'm a Cheerleader, Saw, Requiem for a Dream, and Ringmaster, you know, the Jerry Springer film. Anyways, we have a fun time every week and we hope you will join us. Subscribe to Almost Major wherever you get your podcasts. Now proudly a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.